Welcome to my story. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe, and your support means the world.
Amara Ndlovu had been looking forward to this night for weeks. At 23, she had just been promoted at her marketing firm in Lusaka, and she was about to launch her own small business, a dream she had been quietly building for years. Dinner at her father's estate in Lusaka Heights was supposed to be a celebration, a moment to share her hard-earned success with her family. She walked into the dining room, heart pounding with excitement, ready to announce her achievements. As she began talking about her promotion and her upcoming venture, she noticed her sister Zola smirking from across the table. At first, Amara tried to ignore it, but Zola's laughter grew louder, cutting through the warm chatter of the extended family. "Wow, that's cute, Amara," Zola said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Do you really think anyone cares about your little project?" The words stung, but Amara forced a smile, hoping the family wouldn't notice her rising embarrassment. Then, before anyone could react, Zola's hand connected with Amara's cheek. The room went silent. "You're overreacting as always," Zola snapped, shrugging as if she had done nothing wrong. Amara's cheeks burned, not just from the slap but from the shock and humiliation. She looked to her parents, expecting at least a word of comfort, a sign that they saw what had just happened. But they remained frozen, their faces unreadable, saying nothing. In that moment, Amara felt something shift inside her. The laughter, the silence, the betrayal, it all sank deep. She realized that tonight was more than a simple family dinner. It was the night she saw, with painful clarity, how little her family valued her, and how much she would need to fight for herself. Amara shut her bedroom door behind her and sank onto the edge of her bed, feeling the sting of Zola's slap all over again. Her cheeks still burned, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. The laughter, the mocking words, and the cold silence of her parents replayed over and over in her mind. She felt small, invisible, like a stranger in her own home. She remembered all the times her parents had celebrated Zola's achievements while barely noticing hers. Every award, every scholarship, every promotion she had worked so hard for had been brushed aside, while Zola was praised, pampered, and placed on a pedestal. Amara had stayed up late studying, taken extra shifts at work, sacrificed weekends and holidays to build her skills. And what had she gotten in return? A shrug. A polite nod. A reminder that she was sensitive, or too serious. Zola, on the other hand, seemed to float through life with everything handed to her. The unfairness hit Amara harder than she had expected. It wasn't just the slap or the mocking words. It was years of feeling abandoned in the very family that was supposed to love her unconditionally. She thought about the time she had tried to talk to her parents, to share her dreams, only to be ignored or compared to Zola. She realized, bitterly, that no one in her family was going to cheer for her or protect her from this kind of humiliation. For the first time, a thought crept into her mind. Maybe she didn't need their approval at all. Maybe she could take control of her own life, make her own rules, and prove her worth on her own terms. It was scary to think about, but also strangely freeing. She could invest in herself, focus on her career, her ambitions, her future, and leave behind the constant shadow of favoritism and comparison. As she sat there, staring at the ceiling, a quiet determination began to form inside her. She wouldn't let this moment define her in fear or shame. If anything, it would mark the beginning of something new. For the first time, Amara considered the possibility that the life she wanted, the life she deserved, might not be inside the walls of her family's estate at all. It would be hers to claim on her own terms. Amara sat on her bed, staring at her phone for what felt like forever. Finally, with a deep breath, she dialed the number she knew would make her feel a little less alone. Tendai Whale, her childhood friend who had moved to Livingstone City a few years ago. The line rang once, twice, and then his familiar voice came through, warm and steady. "Amara? Is everything okay?" Tendai asked immediately, concern lacing his tone. She exhaled, trying to keep her voice steady but failing. "No, not really. It's Zola. And my parents. I don't even know where to start." Tendai listened patiently as Amara poured out the events of the evening. The slap, the mocking words, the icy silence of her parents. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge. He just let her speak, letting the frustration and hurt spill out. When she finally paused, Tendai's voice was calm but firm. "Amara, listen. What happened tonight, it's wrong. But don't let them control your worth. You've worked hard. You've sacrificed. Don't let anyone erase that." He gave her practical advice too, ideas she hadn't thought of. Protect your career. Document your achievements. Keep records of your projects and successes. And most importantly, protect your finances. Start planning for independence so no one in the family can hold power over you. Amara felt a spark of hope flicker in her chest. For the first time that night, she felt like someone was truly on her side. When she hung up, she opened her laptop and began gathering everything: certificates, emails, performance reviews, even screenshots of her work accomplishments. She made a quiet promise to herself. This was not just about proving something to her family. It was about proving to herself that she mattered, that her hard work had value, and that no one could diminish her. She also started to think about subtle ways to assert her independence. Sharing achievements online, networking with people who recognized her talent, attending events outside her family's influence. Little moves that would build her confidence and make her presence impossible to ignore. For the first time, Amara felt a sense of control creeping back. It was empowering, almost intoxicating, to realize that the person she could rely on most was herself. And with Tendai's guidance, she knew she could start turning the pain she felt into something powerful, something that would no longer let anyone silence her. Amara hadn't planned to eavesdrop, but that evening as she passed the living room on her way to the kitchen, she froze. Her parents were talking quietly, but she could hear enough to make her stomach drop. Her father's voice carried a mix of pride and dismissal, and her mother's laughter sounded too sharp, too practiced. "Zola really has a way of making things shine, doesn't she?" her mother said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just don't know why Amara gets so emotional about her little projects." Amara's heart clenched. She leaned against the doorway, listening as they went on, praising Zola for accomplishments that weren't even that impressive and ignoring all of Amara's real work. The late nights, the extra classes, the sacrifices that no one seemed to notice. It hit her suddenly. This wasn't an accident. Her parents had always favored Zola, and now it was clear they actively encouraged competition between the sisters, turning achievements into a game where only one could win their approval. Memories flashed through Amara's mind. Every birthday where Zola got the bigger gift, every family gathering where her accomplishments were quietly dismissed, every time she had tried to speak up and been told she was too sensitive or overreacting. Patterns of manipulation she had only sensed now made perfect sense. Her family didn't just overlook her. They used her desire for approval against her. They valued appearances, smiles, and charm over real talent, and they had been training her to doubt herself from the start. Something inside her shifted. She would no longer stay silent. She would no longer let their favoritism define her, humiliate her, or make her invisible. The fire that had been simmering since the dinner ignited fully now. She would find a way to show them, quietly, strategically, on her own terms, that she was more than just the overlooked daughter. That she had worth, talent, and the courage to claim her place. Amara straightened, took a deep breath, and stepped away from the doorway. She felt the weight of years of neglect and favoritism pressing down on her, but she also felt something stronger: determination. From now on, she decided she would stop being invisible. She would stop playing by their rules, and she would start shaping her own story, one they could no longer control. Amara decided it was time to stop hiding. She had been quiet for too long, letting her family's favoritism keep her in the shadows. Now she would make her achievements impossible to ignore, but on her own terms. She started small, posting updates about her latest projects on social media. Nothing boastful, just smart, professional highlights. A campaign she'd led successfully, a new business plan she was pitching, meetings with industry leaders. Almost immediately, people began to notice. Friends messaged her, congratulating her, tagging her in professional networks. Colleagues she admired commented on her posts, praising her hard work and innovation. Invitations to events started coming in: panels, workshops, networking gatherings, places where her family couldn't dictate the conversation, where her name stood on its own, glowing with merit. Amara watched quietly as her parents and Zola occasionally saw her posts, sometimes exchanging surprised glances, sometimes asking casually, "Oh, Amara, what's this about?" But she didn't explain. He didn't need to. The victory was in their silence, in the fact that she was thriving in spaces they couldn't touch. For the first time, she felt the thrill of control, the intoxicating freedom of living outside their judgment, outside their rules. Her confidence grew with each small win. She was invited to collaborate on projects, consulted for advice in her field, and recognized by people who genuinely valued her skills. She even started mentoring younger women, showing them what it meant to build something from scratch without waiting for validation from others. The best part? It wasn't loud revenge. wasn't screaming or anger. It was quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable. Every like, comment, and acknowledgement was a step further away from the sister who had humiliated her and the parents who had stood by silently. With every small achievement, Amara felt a sense of satisfaction deeper than she had imagined possible. She was building her own life, her own reputation, and her own power, proof that she didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. Amara smiled at her reflection that evening, seeing a woman who was finally stepping into her own light. And for the first time in years she realized that real victory didn't come from punishing anyone. It came from proving, quietly but unmistakably, that she could rise no matter what anyone thought. The night of the family dinner at Kairundu River Lodge felt different the moment Amara stepped out of the car. The river's soft glow reflected on the water, but inside she felt a fire burning brighter than ever. This wasn't just another family gathering. Tonight she would no longer be invisible. Tonight she would make them see. As everyone sat around the polished wooden table, Amara began talking, not about promotions or small wins, but about the international project she had been leading, one that had already received recognition beyond Zambia. She spoke with confidence, detailing partnerships, results, and her team's achievements. The room went quiet, even the staff paused, listening. Zola, of course, couldn't resist. A smirk curled on her lips and she leaned toward the table, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Wow, Amara, that's cute. Are you sure this isn't just a hobby?" The words dripped with the same sarcasm and mockery that had haunted Amara for years. Amara took a deep breath. Calmly, she met Zola's gaze and said, "Do you remember last month, Zola? The night you slapped me and called me overreacting in front of everyone?" The air froze. The entire table stiffened. Her parents shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other, clearly trying to deflect. But Amara wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, neatly organized with documents, screenshots, emails, and awards. She laid them on the table, showing the evidence of her accomplishments and the years of favoritism and dismissal she had endured. Every project, every recognition, every proof of her hard work was there, undeniable. The silence that followed was deafening. Her parents opened their mouths but found nothing to say. Zola's smirk vanished, replaced by a mix of shock and embarrassment. Amara's calm, measured delivery and the tangible evidence left them unable to respond, unable to dismiss her success this time. Amara felt a rush of validation, a surge of power she had never experienced at a family dinner. For the first time she saw her family not as a source of limitation or pain, but as witnesses to her rise, witnesses to the fact that she could no longer be humiliated or ignored. That night, as she quietly sipped her water and watched the river shimmer outside, Amara realized something important. This confrontation wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking her place, claiming her voice, and finally being seen. After the confrontation at Kairundu River Lodge, Amara felt unstoppable. The quiet confidence she had been building over months of hard work and careful planning was finally visible to everyone, including her family. She didn't waste a moment. Using the credibility she had earned, she reached out to business contacts, pitching collaborations, consulting opportunities, and mentorship programs. Doors that had once seemed closed swung open, and Amara stepped through each one with determination. Scholarships and grants started coming her way too. She applied for programs that would expand her knowledge, fund her projects, and give her even more independence. People in her community, friends, colleagues, and industry leaders, began to notice her rise. Invitations to speak at events and panels arrived, and each time she stepped onto a stage or into a meeting, she felt her confidence grow. The respect she had longed for her entire life was finally hers, earned through her own grit and talent. Back at home, Zola and their parents tried in small ways to dismiss her achievements. But it was no use. The laughter, the sarcastic comments, the sideways glances, they couldn't reach her anymore. Amara's victories were public, tangible, and undeniable. She could see the frustration in their eyes when she mentioned a new deal or accepted recognition. They had lost the power to humiliate her. Every small win, closing a deal without interference, receiving praise from a respected leader, mentoring a young woman who looked up to her, felt like a personal triumph. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. For the first time, Amara felt like she could breathe, like she belonged not just in her family or community, but in her own life, fully in control. One evening, after returning from a networking event, she stood by her window and looked out over the city lights of Lusaka Heights. A smile spread across her face. She felt validation not from anyone's approval, but from the knowledge that she had fought for herself and won. The tension, the fear, and the humiliation of the past months had transformed into a quiet, powerful freedom. She was finally living on her own terms, and no one could take that away. Amara had been hearing rumors for months. Small hints that Zola's so-called achievements weren't what they seemed. At first she tried to ignore it, not wanting to believe her sister could be so deceptive. But the more she looked, the more inconsistencies she noticed. Certificates that didn't match the schools Zola had claimed, stories that changed depending on who was listening, and accomplishments that were exaggerated or entirely false. A knot of determination formed in Amara's chest. She wasn't just going to succeed, she was going to set the record straight. Quietly, she began collecting evidence. She tracked down original certificates, verified dates, and cross-checked stories with people Zola had supposedly worked with. Screenshots, emails, documents. Every piece built a clear picture of deception. It wasn't about shaming her sister for personal gain. It was about truth, justice, and reclaiming her place in a family that had consistently ignored her real accomplishments. When the next family gathering came, Amara was ready. She didn't storm in angrily or shout accusations. Instead, she presented her findings calmly, letting the facts speak for themselves. She laid out forged certificates, exaggerated stories, and emails confirming the truth. The extended family, who had long assumed Zola's version of events, stared in shock. Zola's confident smirk vanished as whispers spread around the room. Her credibility, once carefully built on lies, collapsed in front of everyone. She stammered, tried to defend herself, but the proof was undeniable. For the first time, Amara's parents could not ignore reality. The years of favoritism, the dismissals, and the subtle undermining of Amara's accomplishments became impossible to justify. They looked at her, eyes wide, as she calmly explained everything she had discovered. For Amara, the moment was more than vindication. It was liberation. Her family had tried to control the narrative, but now the truth was hers. She had not only proven her own abilities but had also exposed the falsehoods that had long overshadowed her. Her parents, forced to confront reality, had no choice but to acknowledge her capabilities. Amara realized that this victory was different from any award or promotion. It was a reclaiming of respect, trust, and the right to stand in her own power. Amara stood in the doorway of her new apartment in Victoria Falls City, taking in the view of the Zambezi River shimmering in the sunlight. For the first time, everything felt completely hers. Her space, her rules, her life. Moving away from Lusaka Heights wasn't just about distance. It was about freedom. Here she could breathe without the weight of her family's judgments pressing down on her, without Zola's sneering or her parents' cold indifference hovering in the background. With her confidence and growing reputation, Amara launched her own consultancy for young women entrepreneurs. She wanted to create a space where ambition, hard work, and integrity were celebrated, not ignored or dismissed. She met with clients, mentored students, and built programs that helped women turn their ideas into businesses. Each success, each grateful message, each deal closed was a reminder that she no longer needed anyone else's approval to thrive. Financial independence followed naturally, giving her security and the ability to make choices freely on her own terms. Her parents, of course, tried to reach out. Calls, messages, even surprise visits. They came with soft words about reconciliation. But Amara had learned the hard way that boundaries were necessary. She responded politely but firmly, setting clear limits and refusing to let old patterns take root again. She could love her family without letting them control her, and she could engage with them on her terms, not theirs. Zola attempted her own version of reconciliation. She sent messages, tried to connect on social media, and even praised Amara's accomplishments publicly. Amara remained cautious. She didn't lash out, but she didn't let herself be drawn back into the cycle of favoritism and jealousy either. Trust, she knew, had to be earned, not assumed. Every morning in her new apartment, looking out over the river, Amara felt a quiet power she had never known. She had built her life from scratch, faced betrayal and favoritism, and emerged stronger. She wasn't just independent, she was unstoppable. Her career, her financial security, and her personal freedom were hers alone. Proof that she could rise above the shadows of her family and shine on her own. For the first time, Amara truly understood what it meant to be in control, not just of her career but of her life, her choices, and her happiness. The night of the Young Innovator Awards was buzzing with energy, bright lights, and excited chatter. Amara stepped onto the stage in Victoria Falls City, her heart steady, her confidence unshakable. Tonight wasn't just another recognition. It was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and proving herself against all odds. She scanned the crowd and saw her parents and Zola sitting in the audience. Their faces were a mix of shock, pride, and disbelief, the same family who had once dismissed her achievements now witnessing her rise on the grandest stage yet. When her name was called, Amara walked up to accept the award, the applause echoing through the hall. She held the trophy firmly, feeling its weight as a symbol of her journey. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't hesitate. Her voice was strong, clear, and unwavering as she shared her story. About the long nights of work, the moments of doubt, the favoritism that tried to hold her back, and the resilience it took to keep moving forward. She spoke not just about her success, but about self-worth, perseverance, and refusing to let anyone define her. The audience was captivated, hanging on every word. Even her family remained silent, unable to interrupt or undermine her this time. The power she once lacked at the family dinner, the humiliation and dismissal, had been replaced with undeniable authority. Every eye in the room, every nod, every applause confirmed what she already knew: she was unstoppable. As she finished her speech, she lifted the award slightly and smiled, a quiet, victorious smile. Turning slightly toward her parents and Zola, she said with perfect calm and strength, "You slapped me to silence me, but I turned the world into my stage." The room erupted in applause, but for Amara the real victory was deeper. She had claimed her voice, her space, and her life, and no one could ever take that away.